we live? I think we're alive. Somebody tell me if we're alive. Hello, hello. This is always the fun part. Somebody tell me if we're alive. Hello, hello. Can you hear the words coming out of my mouth? Sorry, I got to fix something on my end real quick. Please work, please work, please work. Okay. Hang on, we're coming on, we're coming on. It's here, come on. Welcome aboard, Joe. It's the fun of trying to do this stuff on short notice, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it looks like, Joe, welcome to the world. We have all of 6 people on, which is pretty normal for us right at the very beginning.
Okay, glad to be here.
Let me get comfortable in my chair. All right, we're getting set up. Hey, everybody, it's Mike Meyers. As usual, y'all are late, so I'm going to talk slow here at the beginning, and then Joe, I'll give you a nice intro in just a second.
Sure.
Literally have a person who's trying to log in, so I'm sending them the link. All right, so it looks like people are starting to pop in. All right, putting the phone down. Hey, Joe Ramm, how's it going, my brother?
It's going great, Mike. How are you?
Joe Ramm, star of stage and screen, the guy, the Network Plus guy.
And that's my real name.
What?
So that's my real name.
Joe Ramm.
Yeah.
I'm Mike Hard Drive. So many things we can't say on YouTube right now, huh?
It's true.
But anyway, Joe, it's great to see you again, my friend.
Likewise.
Those of you who don't know, this swarthy gentleman with the New Jersey accent starred in our latest Network Plus videos. Hard to believe that was over a year ago, huh, man?
Yeah, time flies.
So it's Network Plus is very, very popular. I don't know if you heard, but I think it was 700,000 views on the Net Plus product on Udemy alone. So hopefully you're starting to see some messages coming back at you saying, hi, you know, all that stuff. So it's important, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, guys, welcome aboard. Today's topic is actually, I think, one that's going to be pretty interesting. Joe, you've been working on Network Plus product for a while. You've been working on simulations. How many months have you been at this?
Oh boy. Well, probably since I returned from the shoot, I say about like 8 months. And then
so and we've been keeping you busy and employed in that time period, I hope.
Yes.
So one of the things I was going to hope we could talk about today is I'm very kind of curious on some insight about the well, we can talk about Network Plus, or if you want to, we can expand outside of Net Plus depending on where your interests are and where your most interesting story is, to be honest with you, in terms of, but we got to be real careful here, Joe. Obviously, we can't talk about actual CompTIA questions, right?
No.
We don't want to. We're you know, that's not what we do at Total Seminars. But what I do want to do is I want to pick your brain a little bit. I know you've been doing a lot of research about these products, and I want to talk about thematics, about the stuff that you're seeing on the exams. We can talk about, I want to talk about topics. I want to talk about question styles, if you have anything in that particular area to discuss. I want to talk about question structures. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I think that people would really enjoy getting some insight about CompTIA certification exams do you want to just concentrate on Network Plus today, or would you like to expand beyond that?
Oh, we can start with Net Plus, and we can kind of see where it goes based on some of the reactions and questions that come from the people that are tuned in.
Yeah.
Even with A Plus, because I that's the most recent thing I just finished as well, is the A Plus simulations as well for total seminars, which was a lot of fun. But yeah, I think we should let's hit the ground run with Net Plus and see where it goes.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started with that. Now, folks, before we get started, do keep in mind that even though we're going to be talking about questions, and again, we're not going to be giving you away answers for questions. We expect you to study properly, and that's not what we're here for. And CompTIA would be very angry at us if we did. So we are not going to do that, but we are going to talk about thematics. We're going to talk about topics. We're going to talk about question structures and the little gotchas that CompTIA is somewhat notorious for, in my opinion, that can sometimes throw somebody who's knowledgeable into a position where they start to panic and maybe don't do as well as they possibly could. But along with that, this is the Mike Meyers Ask Mike Anything AMA. And we are always here to answer your questions. That's the primary reason we're here. Now we're starting here at 2 o'clock Central Standard Time, 3 o'clock Eastern Time, and we run for 1 hour or until the questions run out. So Joe and I are going to talk for a little bit, but do keep in mind that we need those questions from you. And Joe, if a bunch of questions pop in, I may throw them early. We might do them before we get underway, or we'll just see how things go. Is that okay?
Sure.
Well, here's one from my good friend Kylie Powder. They meant do most people go Net Plus then Sec Plus, or the other way around after A Plus? Joe, I'm going to throw that one at you. What do you think, brother?
That's a good question. And I like how you addressed after A Plus, because that is the one that any entry level tech should start with. But I do feel that Net Plus is more popular as the first choice before moving on to Security Plus, because one thing CompTIA does is that each subsequent exam builds upon concepts from the previous one. So when you start doing Network Plus, the introduction, cabling, and all that stuff, that's the networking section of A Plus. And when you go to Security Plus, it's the same kind of concept. Personally, if I were to go to Security Plus before Net Plus, I probably would find it a little more challenging, or maybe a lot more challenging. So
I can't tell you how much I agree with that statement. There is a groundswell of people out there these days who are skipping A Plus and going straight to Network Plus. I'm not against that, to be completely honest with you. If you could raise your right hand and say, I promise to be a pure networking person, there's a lot of aspects about like system hardware and stuff like that that's not critical for somebody who's looking to eventually get into IT security, for example. Now, personally, I think we can all benefit from A Plus, but if people were to skip A Plus, Network Plus is, as I often tell people, Joe, Network Plus is the most important certification you'll never need, because there's so few employers that go must have Network Plus. But to do Security Plus without a Network Plus, just like you said, yes. That took me a long time to go, you're right, Joe. Still there, man?
Yeah, I think you cut out for a second.
You hear me meow?
No, I got you.
Okay, brother. But anyway, I agree. Even with my new company, National Cyber Group, with our Cyber Now Labs bootcamp thing, we go for Security Plus, mainly because if you want to be a baby SOC analyst, I don't want to explain man-in-the-middle attacks. You know what I mean? I want to at least get those basic things. So Security Plus is a great place to start, but we're actually finding ourselves with Cyber Now Labs doing kind of like a pre-lab. Once you sign up, we give you some extra time at the beginning, and it's basically Network Plus, because I don't want to sit here and explain, IP address class types and things like that. People should have that off the top of their head. So it's a very interesting issue, to say the least. All right, all of a sudden questions are coming in. The Eduro minus, dude, I'm just trying to pronounce these names, Joe. What about A plus? Well, I think I answered that one. A plus is still extremely valid certification. But you need to be a systems person. First level support, first level help desk. Those are the people who need A plus. If you're going to be holding a Phillips screwdriver in your hand at any point in your career, you almost certainly need A plus. But Net Plus, especially the way you and I've done it, Joe, I feel can be treated as an introductory course. I think we start with IP addressing and port numbering and packetizing and Ethernet types and all that stuff at a simple enough level that it can be treated that way. Joe, this is a big deal for me to say it because I've been the king of A plus since, well, God was a teenager. So it's a big statement. And so net plus. All right, Kylie Powder. And how big was the jump from A plus to Net plus in difficulty? Kylie, in my opinion, Net plus was easier than A plus. And the reason it was is because Net plus has a much tighter topicality. A plus covers everything from how do M.2 drives work to 802.11 wireless. So it has a lot of breadth to it. Network Plus, especially the newer Network Plus, that now has a lot less security in it, in my opinion. It feels like they've moved all the security for the most part. Joe, I know there's security in Net Plus. I'm not trying to take that away, but
I got you.
It feels to me that the new Net Plus has less of the security stuff and it's been moved to Security Plus. So I think the jump from A plus to Net Plus in difficulty was actually less difficult. What do you think, Joe?
It's fine. I could not agree more that yes, Net Plus is much more concentrated. I think it also depends on what type of learner you are. You know, you have your kinesthetic learners, your auditory learners, your visual learners. With A plus, if you're someone that really likes to get your hands dirty and really likes to build systems and such, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to grasp. There's a lot more hands-on. Whereas Net plus, there is the hands-on as far as creating your 568B cables and such, fiber optic and coaxial and such. But then when you start getting further along the curriculum, it starts to be a lot more theoretical based. And it's not as easy to kind of, as lack of better words, practice at home. And most IT enthusiasts that are going for their A plus, they're more than likely have a PC that they've tried to build, or they can mess around with Windows 11. Whereas Net plus, not many people have this whole massive network configuration in their house. But I will say, yeah, as far as that goes, I found Net plus to be more concentrated. I thought it helped me focus better as opposed to A plus. You have all these different categories. And Mike, if I can piggyback on what you said about regarding A plus, I'm glad you said how it's still a very important certification. A couple of years back, I got into a friendly debate with someone in the IT world saying that A plus was useless, and I think that's completely false because he was saying how systems nowadays, everything's plug and play. Systems manifest themselves. But
people have been saying that to me for 30 years, Joe.
Yes,
I'm so tired of listening to that. Pick the YouTube acceptable word here. Shucky darns. Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
It's not all. You're good. So what I said to him, I said, look, if you have any sort of device, if you have a cell phone, if you have, even cars have computers, you need to understand, okay, because switches are devices, routers are computers, they have CPUs, they have memory. If you need to understand how a CPU works, how does memory work? How does storage work? So A plus provides you with that foundation. So when you move on to other devices that have, desktop computers are not the only things that have a CPU, storage space, and memory. You guys all know that out there. So that's where I feel that, it's very important to SAR A plus. And again, I'm with Mike. There's nothing wrong with going right to Net plus, but I do think it's important that you should at least have a foundation of how a system itself works.
Go to Net plus, but you have to raise your right hand and promise you're never going to be a systems person. Exactly. That's the thing. So, I know who this person is. The Eater Romanus. This was a person I ran into on LinkedIn, and I asked this person to join us today. So sorry, Joe, this person's coming loaded with questions. That's basically right. The big question this person's asking is, Mike, I have your study materials. How do I use that? First of all, let's make sure you have study materials. Number one, you need instruction, which means you need videos. Number two, you need reference, which means you need a book of some kind. And number 3, you need to be challenged, which means practice banks. I don't care if it's CompTIA. I don't care if it's a nursing certification. Those are the 3 things people generally need to learn. Can you get rid of one of those and still learn? Sure, but I can't guarantee it. You know what I mean? I have trained over 1 million people for sure. We never have studied this over 27 years. I think it's probably tens of millions at this point. But the bottom line is that you need those 3 things. Now, the question you're asking is, okay, how do I use those 3 things? And like Joe just said, people learn different ways. So let's say you're a visual learner. And Joe, if you disagree with anything I'm about to say, fix me, all right?
Okay.
But as a visual learner, you usually find yourself going through videos. And it's like, well, do I go through all the videos, or do it chapter by chapter, or do it, section by section? I'm not going to tell you. What I need you to do is figure out what keeps you in study mode. All right. So Joe, you might be a reader and you'd like to read through the book first, then start to watch the videos. I know a lot of people who watch videos and have the book open at the same time. It's completely up to you. I won't tell you how to do it because I don't know you from Adam. Kinesthetic learners will often have an extra system laying around, especially with A+ at the early parts where they want to, look and find their hard drive, their video card, and look at their PCI 16 lane versus 1 lane. It's up to you how you use the tools. Probably the most important tool is the practice questions. And, if you're not doing well on the practice questions, you're not going to do well on the exam. So what do you have to do well in the practice questions? Most people tend to do a chapter by chapter thing. If you're going to use my practice questions, you can literally pick it by chapter, and that tracks to the book. If you watch Joe's Network Plus video, you'll see that we pretty much, not exactly, but very closely follow the Network Plus book. So you can use that as one mechanism. Try that first. Do you find yourself drifting off, making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and watching Transformers reruns? That's the cue that you probably need to try something different. So it's completely up to you. There's another class of learners, Joe, that people don't talk about that much, and that's what I call social learners.
Good point.
Especially if you're, as a teacher, a lot of people want to be in groups, classes, and there's 1,000 places. Like, for example, if you want somebody to study with, you should join our Discord channel. We have a wonderful Discord channel here. Dave Rush will go ahead and post it for you, and just join that channel. Even people who aren't studying will often, like, you have a question or something that's fun for them, especially on, you run into guys like Andre or Tolowit or Patricia. They're all going to be the types of people who they just love talking about it. So if you're a social person, and I'm almost tempted to add a 4th thing there, Joe, I think so many people are social about that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So hang on, the questions are starting to pour in. Joe, are you watching the YouTube as well?
Yes, I am.
I don't know.
Well, someone wants to know why no one can make pizza like as good as New Jersey.
Yeah, but nobody in Jersey can make pierogies like they can in Pennsylvania.
This is true. This is true. There was a question I saw before I wanted to address about, I think it's also kind of tailored to what you said, Mike. I'm sorry if I mispronounced this, Therodiminus. The question I really stood out to me is, when do you think it's a good time to say, I'm ready? Again, like Mike says, we don't know you from Adam. That's a question that you can answer. But the advice that I can give you from my experience is, yes, when Mike said the practice questions are key, because you could be one of those. There are people out there that are just simply bad test takers or have test anxiety. And I used to be one of those people in high school. I would be able to, like, if I was taking a foreign language class, I'd be able to speak it, write it, this and that. And when it came time to take a test, I was drawing a blank. So the key with the Net Plus and the A Plus, or CompTIA in general, is to understand how the questions were structured. And I think it'd be a good idea. I obviously can't discuss the questions, but it's just understand how to read the questions, because a lot of the times you get something wrong, it's because you read it too quickly, or you just drew a blank, but there are ways they try and trip you up. So like Mike says, we cannot discuss the question specifically, but it might be a good idea today, Mike, if it's okay with you, to go over some strategies to be aware of.
Sure. Joe, hit it, man. I'm just going to sit at your knee and listen.
So one of the things I can tell you is that you want to first, when you see a question, sometimes a certain word will give away the category, the type. It'll kind of lead you in a direction to what it might be about. For example, if your question's asking you about a protocol and it starts talking about mentioning monitoring, and that could, and monitoring protocols, that might start to make you think, monitoring, well, maybe SNMP is a possibility. Or, there's other questions such as ones that try to put two answers that sound similar, where one doesn't really exist and the other one is the correct answer. And not to say that's always going to be the right way to go, but in most cases, my experience when I took the exam was that, if you say something like wireless client separation versus wireless client isolation, well, if you've been doing your studying, you should know the proper term is wireless client isolation. Things like that. They try to trip you up in ways like that. So always read the question in full, read it again, and then read each answer thoroughly, because sometimes you'll be quick to, I know this, and you click it and it's the wrong answer, and you're like, oh shoot, I knew it was that one. So that's definitely a good approach to taking the exam for sure.
Well, now I'm working while I'm talking. I'm letting you do your thing, man.
Yeah, I'm just
All
trying
right.
to address.
Hold on. So taking the quizzes at the end back to back, rereading the information. What do you think is a good time to say, oh, you got that one. Okay, great. How can you access the system reset when your computer won't boot up? Because that's what I saw in the quiz question. How do you access the system reset? See, the problem we have here is I don't know I'd have to see the exact question in front of me. I wouldn't even want you to transpose it. I'd want you to take a picture of the question you're asking me so I could react to it. But not having that, I'll speculate. How do you access the system reset? Well, it depends on the system. How do you reset your Android there, Joe?
I just hold down the power button.
Right,
there's two different kinds. There's like a hard reset that you can do, and then there's just a standard reset.
Now, how do you reset your desktop PC?
The reset button.
That's right. Yeah. Don't make this stuff hard, man. Remember, the number one reason, or the number two reason that people fail CompTIA exams is too much. You're looking for too much detail. The old adage, if you see hoof prints, think horses, not zebras, will get you through CompTIA exams every time. So keep it simple and you'll be fine.
I agree.
So Joe, anytime you see me looking like this, it's because I'm looking for questions.
Yeah, me too. I'm doing the same thing. So while Mike's good.
Oh no, Kylie was asking some questions, but Dave has jumped in and answered a few of them. So we're doing okay. Daniel Thibodeau, man. I swear to God, I'm going to change my last name from Meyers to Thibodeau just because it's such a good Cajun name. Get off from the truck, shall we? We're going to go do the clothes. I've spent a little time in Louisiana. I've shot many of their birds and pulled many of their fish out of the water and ate them.
Nice. Okay.
So on New Year's, we're going dove hunting.
Really?
Sorry. I don't know. Is it PC to talk about hunting anymore? I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yes. So many topics you have to avoid.
Okay, we missed some questions here. I'm going to have to, which ones did I miss, Dave? 206. Ali, is it possible to use the same domain account to log on locally? I mean, disconnected from the network. If your security controls are set to allow that, absolutely you can do that. Most Windows domain systems, if they can't find a way to get home, will allow you to use account. However, on a lot of people, that is a security control that is not allowed. So that can be very frustrating for people. Joe, I don't know if you ever run into this where you've got let's say you have a laptop, okay? And you take it into the office every day and you plug in and you have a domain account, you log in, everything's great. But then you come home and then you're like, I can't log in. And earlier versions of Windows didn't allow you to do that. Yes. And it was frustrating because you end up with you'd log in locally, but that's a different user profile, right? So you have a different documents folder and a different desktop and all that. But Windows will allow it. There's a certain amount of time where it times out by default, and I don't remember what that is. But yeah, you absolutely can.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, Mike, wasn't Windows NT Workstation known for that?
Oh, I would go even later than NT. Been a while, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was more recent than NT4. Was that a problem?
Okay.
All right.
I'm going through here myself.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, Joe, it looks like the questions slowed down a little bit. So let's talk a little bit. Let's get into the brass tacks of, let's start with Network Plus. Talk to me about topics. And Joe, when I say topics, I'm not interested in you just yelling off the objective list. We all have that. All right.
Oh, dear, please.
But again, don't give anything away here. All right. We can discuss topics, but we can't discuss questions. What are the problems, the nuances, the obvious things, the heads ups, the watch thises? And we can break this down either by multiple choice or performance based or as a whole. So with that simple question.
Well, I could definitely, one of the things what I noticed is that definitely make sure, as far as topic goes, network documentation. That is, over the years, that's become more and more crucial as they keep updating these certifications. Make sure you definitely know the differences, between statement of work, baseline, or, BYOD policy, things like that, because there are questions on there that, will give you some answers because some documentation is very different. One's much different than the other. Like a baseline is totally different from a BYOD policy, but then there are documentations that might look a little bit similar. So you have to really pay attention to the question, but definitely I personally got a good amount of questions on network documentation for sure.
Did you see things like physical versus logical network documentation?
Well, it was, I mean, yes, I did see that, but it was more knowing which document to refer. So if say you're trying to, if they're referring to understanding where punch downs are occurring on the panel, or from the patch panel to the switches or whatever, then you might want to head towards the wiring diagram. So things like that, they would give you a scenario. So for example, John, who owns Balin Widgets, first thing that comes to mind, is just purchased 200 new PCs to expand the network. Which documentation should he update? And that's things like that. And you have the choices. And does anyone out there know the answer to that one? See if they can type it in the chat.
Well, let's see if somebody says something. It's always fun. So, but while we're talking about that, I think it's important. I mean, these are well-known objectives anyway, is, understanding a memorandum of understanding versus statement of work, and those types of tool sets are really important. And you'll hit them again in Security Plus, in particular, pen testing type questions, things like that, where that's going to be coming very, very important. And then on Pen Test Plus, then it's a big deal, because if you don't do that right, you could theoretically go to jail. You can.
Bad thing. We have some more questions here, Mike.
I see Tolowit at 226. For IPv6, do they sell consecutive blocks of addresses to company, or is it just random ones? It's pretty consecutive right now. In fact, Tolowit, they don't even sell them. At this point, IANA continues to give away and allocate IPv6 blocks for free. But keep in mind, probably the biggest block anybody, unless you're a really big company or an ISP, is a WAC 56 block is going to be more than enough. That's going to give you 16,000 different networks if you need to subnet it that much. but where people do get in trouble is they go, well, why don't you just allocate me a WAC 64? And WAC 64s are for end user networks. So they're really not allocated per se. You have an ISP who's usually allocated in some big ISPs. It could be a WAC 48, but it's usually like a WAC 56 address. And then the ISPs themselves are going to break that down. So if you're allocated, let's say you're a big enough company to even rationalize a WAC 56, they're going to leave it to you to handle that. I can actually tell you that, for example, in Xfinity business, I don't want to lie, but I'm about to lie. Hang on a minute, Joe. Let me remember what it is. They're passing out like WAC 60s. So that's 4 characters. And then you just go ahead and, set up basically what I see more than anything else is you configure your subnets and then just throw, if needed, DHCP in there, which is still unfortunately needed for some IPv6. But for the most part, you've usually got your front end router that you just drop in your different network IDs from like a WAC 60 to a WAC 64. Well, that would be 16 characters, sorry. 16 bits, 4 characters. And then that's up to you. You can get these for free from the IANA. They're passing them out. It's like 1987 all over again, Joe. They're just like, we never thought we'd be using them. And in some of the stories about the IANA trying to get back IPv4 blocks have been interesting. No, it's all free right now. But the other thing is, I'm sorry, Joe, I want to throw in one more thing. I knew I was going to ask you questions, but now I'm all challenged. Aggregation is important with IPv6, and people don't understand that. So where one router is handling a WAC 56, and then the next one's handling a WAC 60, and the next one down's handling a WAC 64, that aggregation massively reduces router table size. So by the time you get up to tier 1, where your BGP box, which used to be suffering under 30,000 lines of routing table, IPv6 can drop that down to, well, theoretically 1, right? If it's all going upstream to the to tier 1, and it takes a lot of heat off of your routers. Now I know everybody's still supporting IPv4 completely, so we're not quite seeing the benefits of aggregation yet, but 10 years from now we will.
Yes. Mike, I wanted to, it's funny you said what you said before. There's a question here with Daniel Thibodeau, if I pronounce that correctly.
Thibodeau.
So the corporation wants to add, this is based on the sample question. I asked if anyone knew the answer. The corporation wants to add 200 new computers. Why wouldn't you use slim desktops and use DAS or VM machines? See, it goes back to what Mike said about sometimes you know too much. I agree with you 100%. More and more now companies are going virtual. They're using, software as a service, platform as a service, desktop as a service, all those services in the cloud. But the exam does ask the questions like that. They do ask questions that you're like, wait a minute, why would anybody do that? In fact, I still saw stuff with WinServer and NetBIOS and all that stuff that I haven't seen in quite some time. So it's just more of knowing.
Well, wait, current Network Plus questions that say NetBIOS?
Yes.
Were they right?
I can't speak the question.
Wait. Were they right answers?
No, it wasn't. It was, I'm trying to say this without saying the question. It was along the lines of saying, that you're going from a Win server to a DNS server. Something.
No.
I'm not kidding. I swear. I'm reading this. I'm like,
well, no, don't say anything.
I'm not going to say, I was like, okay. So,
interesting. That is probably a mistake on CompTIA's part. But this brings up an interesting point, and that is so many people think that they have to know the answer to everything in order to succeed at it. Let me give you the best example is going into a system setup. Joe, you weren't watching, but I just built a beast of a gaming system, which included an RTX 4090 card in it.
So your picture.
And we had some great episodes, and we start going into the system bias. And I'm sorry, when you go into an advanced system bias on a cutting edge system, you're going to find a lot of settings in there and you don't know what they are. Many technicians, when they see that, it throws them. They're like, oh, what's this page? I don't know what this means. You're building a system. Find this drive and install Windows on it. You know, you don't have to have every line memorized. This is true for any certification too. You'll see people, Joe, they'll be doing a practice, a real test, say, and then all of a sudden they see one of the answers and they've never seen that answer before. And they're like, wow, they start losing it. And it's like, dude, you're getting a little too Aspergery for me there. Trust your training materials. Joe and I have been doing this for a long time, people. I've been doing it longer than Joe, but he's got more hair. So when you see things that you don't understand, trust your training. You're fine. Ignore the stuff. I will say, Joe, that CompTIA is notorious for putting in as wrong answers in multiple choice questions, phrases and terms that are often well outside the objectives that can toss people.
Yes, absolutely.
Be cool, fool. Just be mellow and move on. You've got good training.
Yeah, and I do agree with Mike. Once again, you know, can you pass the exams without all three video, you know, reading and, you know, practice questions? Yes, again, it all comes down to you. But for me, I've always found using all three, and I tried to do that with my students. I tried to adhere to all their learning types: hands, kinesthetic, visual, audio. And like I said, I was a big user of Mike's products long ago. That's how I met Mike.
Yeah. So Tolwood has an interesting question. He's basically saying, do the 128-bit numbers of an IPv6 cause more I'm going to transpose the question, cause more latency than a 32-bit one? Well, first of all, remember that any Ethernet packet's going to be 1,500 bytes almost all the time. So, you know, adding, what would that be, Joe? 128 minus 32 is about 96 times 2, because you have a to and a from. So adding 200 bits to a 1,500-bit packet anyway, and including jumbo packets, which are plenty of those, I don't see it being substantial. And I assure you that proper aggregation of IPv6 routes is going to more than make up for the tiny bit of extra time it takes. And the other thing you got to remember, Tolowit, is that tier 1 is, you know, sitting these days at 400 gigabit, stuff like that. So the speeds that we're seeing at tier 1 level is unprecedented compared to your little gigabit, or if you're really fancy, 10 gig. Yeah, that new super system I bought, Joe, has a 2.5 gig in it.
Oh my gosh.
Now, Can you do me a favor and find me a 2.5 gig switch that I can actually take advantage of that on? Oh, plus it has aggregation too. So it's like I could do 5 gigabit throughput with the right hardware without any work at all. Wow. What about ports? Daniel Thibodeau is curious about ports. What insight can you give us about ports on Net Plus?
Oh, wow, I was afraid that'd be asked. So I'm gonna be honest with you. I am, you know, not one, like, thank God for cell phones. I'm not really my strong suit is not memorizing numbers. And I have had that problem with a lot of my students as well. And I'm not gonna lie, to this day, there are times where someone's like, do you remember the port number for RDP? And I'm like, you know, yeah, that's okay. The 3389 is one I know off the top of my head. But there are some port numbers, if you ask me the whole laundry list and to spew them off like 1, 2, 3, it's not going to happen. I'm not a numbers guy like that. What I can recommend, what I do with my students, is to do some sort of graphic organizer with them. And what I do with my students is I categorize them. So these are all the protocols that have to do with email. POP3, POP4, IMAP4. These are the protocols that have to do with, you know, network management, SNMP. So break them down to that first, and then kind of the only thing you do is memorize them. You know, you know, I would break them down into chunks, study them, get them down, you know, and then go to the next chunks. Break them down into categories. I wish I had it in front of me. I have like my PowerPoint that broke them down. I think it was into 6 different categories. But that's my recommendation for as far as ports go. Like I said, number memorization is not my wheelhouse.
So, well, the only thing I would add to that is that, assuming you like have a Windows system, is running programs like NetStat, and like doing, like, for example, watching listening ports. Because if you have a listening port on your computer, that means you have a server on your computer. A server listens to port numbers and responds to it. A lot of malware manifests as ports that are open and listening on your system. So running a quick netstat -a for all can often be a very illuminating way for you to learn about port numbers. Because all of a sudden, Joe, they're sitting there and they've got an open port 25, heaven forbid, or 23 or 22 or 23, things like that. Open port 69, you're running a DHCP server on your system. And this stuff happens all the time, people. And it's a great way to motivate you to understand what the port number simply tells you what protocol is running on your system. Remember that scene from The Matrix when the guy's like, oh, all I see are blondes, brunettes, redheads, even though it's just the green matrix things going down? Well, that's the same thing for me with ports. I see 443. If I have a listening port 443, I'm going to be like, I'm running a secure web server, which happens all the time. Video cards that automatically update are notorious for having open 443 ports, for example, stuff like that. But that motivates me to learn. That's all I'm trying to say. That it helps me learn. The other place that helps me learn about ports is in my router. Playing with port forwarding is a wonderful lesson in learning about your ports. Get yourself some cheap little camera, okay? Put it on the inside of your little network, and then on the WAN side, try to access that camera. And so configuring port forwarding to be able to do that. So let's say the camera's listening on port 80, right? Setting up port forwarding in such a way that you can access that camera, and I don't want to we do plenty of port forwarding videos, is another great motivation to understand how ports work. The other thing is that if you learn about a port, let's say port 3389, so that's remote desktop, right? Well, run a remote desktop, man. Do it. It's free in every operating system, one way or the other. Grab something called Tight VNC if you're looking for anything else, and run these things. You don't need a big fancy network. You just need 2 computers. You can set up 2 virtual machines and be able to do this. Is look at it and watch them run. Make it so that when you run NetStat, you can see that port number 3389 there. To simply raw memorize ports is a ripoff to yourself. As I'm not saying you have to do, secure email servers might be tough for somebody at a Network Plus level to configure, right? But it's not impossible, number one. I don't know if I want to get into that level. But for the most part, play with the protocols, play with the applications that use the protocols that use the ports, and it'll help you secure it in. I don't even think about things like what port number is, I don't know, give me a quick one. What is Telnet? You know what I mean? I don't even really think about that stuff. I just think about port numbers.
Yeah, and if I could piggyback on that, Mike, 2 things. One, yes, playing around with the ports as far as what they do, that's very, very important. Like especially remote desktop, you said it's free. Type VNC is great. Andre de Guyer mentioned something. He goes, ports on Net Plus, don't memorize port numbers. Remember what they do. Absolutely. I would never say just to sit there and just only memorize port numbers. That actually, when I was a while ago when I was learning about port numbers, that's actually what I did. But the way the exam structures the question, they'll structure certain questions about, you want to see what happens if you want to block web pages coming in, which port would you have to configure with, things like that. So yeah, I wouldn't just simply sit there like a zombie and say, okay, HTTP port 80, RDP 3389, DHCP 6768, and all. No, but playing around with some hands-on stuff and also knowing what they do, absolutely. So yes, you're absolutely right, Andre.
All right. Looks like we missed another question. My good buddy Abgar asked about, I have little problems understanding the cryptography, and I'm wondering if the exam will hit cryptography hard. Joe?
As far as Net Plus, because I saw that question before too. Are you referring to Net Plus?
Sure, let's go with Net Plus.
To be honest with you, if I can recall, the only thing I saw in regard to cryptography and hashing and of that nature is SHA and MD5. They are on the objectives, but I never personally got any questions regarding that. I did not.
Yeah, to me, it's not. You understand cryptography so that you can understand algorithms, so you can understand security protocols. You're not going to understand AES unless you have some inkling of what key means, for example, right? Or things like that. So we go into cryptography not because I'm trying to turn you into an expert on triple DES versus AES. No one's going to ask you questions like that. But what they are going to ask you is key length. What they're going to ask you about is where the applications take place and things like that. And or if you're looking at a HTTPS suite coming in through a TCP handshake, TLS handshake, you need to be able to look at that. And if it's going to sit there and say RSA 4096, AES, and it's going to be in that order, MD SHA-2, let's go with something. You need to understand what each piece of those are so that when your computer's negotiating with a web server, what they're looking to do. And so I do cryptography. The main reason I do cryptography, Joe, is because I don't like black boxes. And that's always the measure of a tech, is how far down are they willing to go before they accept the black box. Okay. And because I consider myself an academician of this stuff, I go all the way down. You know what I mean? And but for the exams itself, I can say this because it describes the objectives, is that no one's going to ask you to march through a complete AES cryptographic system with the S cards and all that stuff. I put that in the books because I think it's cool, and Joe does in the videos because, well, he learned from me, and old habits die hard.
It's true. This is true. I'm always learning from you, Mike. To this day. Okay, let's see.
So basically, Joe, if Andre and Tolowitz say anything, smile and move on, because they're the two biggest smart rear ends there are.
Yeah, I just learned that the hard way. I thought he was serious asking me about what telnet is short for, what it meant.
All right, well, hey, can we talk about performance-based questions for a little bit?
Sure.
Guys, just so you know, Joe writes the majority of our sims for the Total Seminars product. He's certainly got a team behind him, but Joe is currently our expert at performance-based questions and how they manifest. So what, Joe, let's start off with this. What's your philosophy of writing PBQs for Total Seminars? What are the three things that are important to me, or I'm always considering this, or I'm going to try to not put words in your mouth? Go.
Well, one of the things when I started doing these, because I just, for FYI, I did the newer Network Plus ones for 08, and I did the newer, for the A Plus 1100 series, I did those as well. Well, I definitely prescribe your philosophy, Mike, that you always said. Why the three reasons why we learn something: one, it's on the exam; two, because it's cool; and three, I'm blanking out. What was the third one?
Number one, it makes you a better tech.
Better tech, that's right.
Number two, it's on the exam. Number three is because it's cool, or CIC. And number four, which you can't do with yours, but one I do, sometimes you have to learn something you don't need to learn. Because if I don't teach you something, you're going to get mad at me.
Okay, so there's 4 now. Now I know 4. So
No,
what I do,
give you an example. Talking about 32 versus 64-bit processing. It's easy for me to cheat and black box that. But the reality is, if we don't drill down and look at register size and address bus and data bus sizes, you don't really know what it means. Now, once you learn that, you're never going to fix a computer. You're never going to pass a certification. It might be CIC, but I mean, so many times I'll do stuff that you don't need to know, because if I don't satisfy your quest for knowledge, you're going to close the book. Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. That's okay.
Here, let me keep asking you questions and interrupting. I seem to be an expert at that today.
It's fine. We haven't touched base in a while, so it's a lot to catch up on. But yeah, so when I do these simulations, I try to make them, because they're in a form. If you haven't done them before, do them. They're a lot of fun. But they're in a form of of like what's called clicks, and you click your way through different scenarios. Or there's a typing scenario, especially with command line stuff, Linux stuff. So what I tend to do is there's so much in the book, and it's like I said, okay, what can I cover? How can I make this without being so redundant? So what I do is I try to do as many things that a tech would do. Let's take the certification out of it for now. Things that you would do on an often basis as a tech, as a network tech, as a system support, desktop support tech. So I take that approach, because could you imagine, like, for instance, the command line? Now, if I were to try and create simulations for every single command line that's out there, I mean, forget it. I'd be working on it forever. So I work with the stuff. So I CD, MD, RD, wildcards, things like that, or if I'm doing, when it comes to, as far as Net Plus, I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head, configuring a static IP address, or configuring an alternate IP address, or using tools like netstat, or using tools like ipconfig or ipconfig all, things like that. So things that you would do whether you went for this certification or not, and you would be doing these things if you were to work in the field. So that's kind of what my approach was with that, Mike.
All right. Hey, Joe, you want to make $1 million?
Always.
You ready? To me, the big challenging part about command line is that the questions often will say, what created this output? And make a deck of cards. Okay, Joe? And it's a regular 52 card deck. But on the back of the card, put sample outputs. And then on the front of the card, right where it says 5 of hearts or whatever, show the command. I would buy a deck of cards like that in a heartbeat.
Especially well, you gave everybody the idea.
Yeah.
Now it's where it gets to it first. Oh, Mike, we have a question about SCADA. Is it a software or hardware, or just a term we use in industrial control system?
None of the above. What is, Joe, will you look up SCADA for me while I start to answer this? Yeah, you want to take it? Go for it, man.
No. See, when I started getting to, when they started adding SCADA type things to the exam, that was something that was like kind of boggling me a little bit at first as well, because I didn't personally work hands-on in that type of environment. But I always took it that it's a category that has to do with industrial control systems, gathering data, looking at temperature control, sensors, monitors.
Joe, you're forgetting the big difference between ICS and SCADA, the big thing. And that is SCADA is long geographic distances. Railroads use SCADA. Power lines use SCADA.
Right.
Pipelines use SCADA, where you have intermittent control systems, and they may be just taking temperature or making sure the pump's running or whatever, but they're designed to have a small amount, or in these cases, more and more amount of autonomy. If the network goes down, or keep in mind, you ain't running Ethernet on these things. Ethernet doesn't run for 1,100 miles. So you're often using wireless technologies and things like that in order to make SCADA work. So, SCADA is more of I'd call it a topology more than anything else. I'm going to look it up.
That's an interesting way of putting it. I know it definitely covers more ground than your traditional ICS, which is more centralized, but
it's not necessarily that they monitor different data, Joe. You know, it's like a control system architecture. That's what came from Wikipedia. I'm not saying Wikipedia is the ultimate, but a lot of times for 10,000 foot stuff, it does a pretty good job. This is straight from Wikipedia. Supervisory control and data acquisition is a control system architecture compromising computers, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So, and then it talks about like alarm handling and, you know, in particular, does SCADA, SCADA assumes that sometimes the network can go down and reacts with that. To me, that's the biggest difference.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So did we finish with performance-based? Did we cover what you wanted to cover?
Oh, yeah. So like I said, so yeah, for those of you who are, you know, who have access to the hub, you know, and you want to check out those questions, I would love, and Dave Rush provided my email, I would love any feedback, if anything you'd like to see going forward that I possibly didn't cover. Because like I said, it's the challenging part is that, you know, you could use Mike Meyers' book to really knock somebody out. That's how heavy it is. So there's a lot to go through with that. So, you know, in order to go through and sift through and not make sure there's no superfluous information in my clicks, you know, I want to make sure I grabbed the real like heavy hitters that, you know, are practical. So if you happen to have access to that and you do the Net Plus Sims, the newer ones that have Windows 10, if there's one that you'd like to see going in future updates, please send me an email, or if you have any questions on them, or need some guidance, you know.
Well, Joe, with that in mind, why don't we give away some practice questions? Some of your new, well, I know most of your new stuff has already been posted and is on the hub. Let's give them away. Now, guys, I need to warn you. We make two different products. The Total Tester is the multiple choice questions, and then the Total Sims is the performance based. And we sell those as two separate products. Sorry, I've learned the hard way over the years that it's the better way to learn is to keep them separate. And I'm sticking to that. But with that knowledge in mind, we've never tried giving away Total Sims before, Joe, so I don't even know if we can. So let's go ahead and give away 90-day access to the practice questions of your choice. However, we'll be working with Dave, and if possible, we'll go ahead and give away the Total Sims, and that way you can talk to Joe. Joe, in the Sims, do you keep question numbers at the bottom so that people can reference questions that they like or don't like, or is that just on the Total Tester?
You know, that's a great question. You know, I'm pretty sure
and it might actually be something that you don't do. We might be doing it on our end.
Yeah, so, I don't think that. Yeah, because basically I create them and then upload them to the clouds. I think we use Media Magician.
I understand.
Yeah, I upload all that stuff, and then it gets handled on Total Seminars and as far as how they get implemented into the hub.
All right, so here we go, guys. Joe, do you have a question for today that we can challenge them on, or?
Sure. Let's.
I don't have one. I you know, like I'm always so well prepared. Hey, I put on a shirt. You know.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to go into the network documentation one because we already. Now, Mike, just so I know, we already said that we're not allowed to talk about CompTIA questions, but are we allowed to talk about the questions on the hub?
Absolutely. Go for it, man.
Okay. Let's see. Let's see.
You're pulling up the hub.
Yeah, I am.
Fine with me.
You want me to, off the top of my head?
No.
I can do that one. Well, you know, there's some people in there that know. Okay, so what is the purpose? When would you need?
Wait, don't get it in your head. I got to say one more thing to these guys.
Oh,
folks, we're about to give away 90-day free access to the practice questions of your choice. The first person who writes the answer down in the chat window wins. Now, I'm going to warn you, this competition is not fair. I try to make it as fair as I can, but the vagrancies of YouTube and things like that can make it tough. If you're a ringer and you know the answer, type in the word pass, P-A-S-S, after it, which means I'm playing, but I'm just going to pass. All right. So let's go ahead. and Joe's going to ask a question. The first person to write down an answer that I like wins 90-day free access. Joe, hit it.
Okay. When would you need to implement DHCP relay? Play the Jeopardy theme.
Give him a minute.
Mhm.
When would you implement DHCP relay? So yeah, folks, you actually have to type some English words. You can do this. Don't be afraid. So Joe, notice nobody's typed anything in yet.
They're all Googling.
They're all, well, they might be, but
I'm kidding, guys.
yeah, Kylie, I got to tell you, I'm giving people time to type in an answer, but Kylie, I noticed you said that we still owe you, dude. So many people win these competitions and they never even send us an email or anything like that. So Dave can only react to what you do. All right. And you can get there and say, I sent an email or whatever it might be. Dave is a busy, busy boy. Trust me. I work him hard. So it's up to you, Kylie, usually via email, is to send Dave a reminder or something like that. Okay. Zam. I haven't seen Zam in ages. Zam, how you doing, man?
Zam.
301. We're kind of at the end here.
So we got a couple of answers that came in. Reduce the amount of equipment at client site. Is it when you have DHCP on an internal subnet, but you have static routes for a server? We have in a site-to-site VPN. Reduce manual configuration may be passed. When clients,
I see an answer I like, Joe.
Oh, you go first. You see, you did it or you did?
Did.
Okay. Tell me what it is. I think I'm on the same page as
The
you.
only one I really like is Mark Wheeler. When clients and servers are not on the same actual subnet.
Correct. I agree.
Can I give him the W?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Congratulations to you, Joe. You got to go like this. Round of applause. There you go. All right. Fantastic. Mark Wheeler, you, sir, are the winner. Mark, what I need you to do right now is check your screen. And I'm going to talk louder. Oh, how do we get, I want the screen to get bigger. Dave Rush, help. I don't know how to do this. All right, well, I'm going to tell you how, and Dave Rush is going to put the what you need to do in line anyway. Number one, you have to send an email to my buddy Dave Rush. That's drush@total7.com. In that email, Mark, you got to put your YouTube name, Mark Wheeler. Number two, you have to put your email address. Even though it's an email, I still want your email address in the body of the email because people play games. And then number three, tell us what you want, man. We go way beyond A+, Net+, Security+. Head on over to the Total Seminars website. Look at the broad cross-section of practice questions that we provide. Mark, what we're going to try to do without any promises is whatever you ask for is we're going to try to send you the simulation. And when it comes to Joe Ramm, that's going to be A+ and Net+, right, Joe?
Correct.
Okay. So if you want to see his new simulations, and you'll be one of the first people to see them, you're going to have to either pick A+ or Net+. However, do keep in mind that A, we may not be able to do that because I've never even tried before. And then number two, if that doesn't work, we will always be glad to send you 90-day access to the practice questions of your choice. So congratulations to you, sir. All right.
Very nice.
Joe, we're over time already, man.
Oh my gosh. Time flies when you're having fun with Mike Meyers.
There's a coming up with a buddy of mine. I want to start talking about using the cloud as a place to practice networking. We haven't really done it. And I've seen a couple of people try, and thus far I haven't been thrilled with what I'm seeing. Now I've done it with virtual machines, local virtual machines, pulling down the ISOs and doing all that. But what would you think about doing something where you could set up like a Windows AD up in the cloud and all that type of stuff.
Oh gosh, I wish I had access to stuff like that when I was going for my certs. Yeah, that sounds
And
like
what if we showed them how to do it for free?
Oh,
I think it can be done, man. I think it can be done.
okay.
All right, folks, that's all we got for today. Do keep in mind that Steve Zam, we're finally going to answer your MSI question. I've been stalling on that for literally almost 3 weeks, simply because Steve wanted to answer that, and he keeps getting hit by hurricanes. And I was about to give up on him, but he's Dave Rush says we can give them both away. All right. So Mark, it's up to you, man. We'll send you Sims unless you straight up want the questions. So Zam, please keep coming back. It's been we miss you. And then the other thing was, what was it? Oh yeah, so we've got Jones. I forgot his name. This is so embarrassing. He actually used to work for me. Joe, we got one of the guys from the Spartan department on the International Space Station coming in to show us how we use power and networking on the ISS. I think that's going to be fascinating.
Wow.
Doug Jones. And he's an ex-missileer too. He's got some funny stories about spending nights in silos.
Wow.
So it's great. And then who else do we have? We've got more people coming. Well, we'll have Joe Ramm coming back, I'm sure.
Of course.
We'll do some consortium stuff. And I want to pick your brain more on practice questions, Joe, especially now while your brain's still fresh from doing that. And I'm thinking about bringing in some of our competitors even, just to have a talk. These are our friendly competitors.
Okay.
Robin Abernathy, I've been thinking about from IP Pro TV, would be the gal I'd love to have here. She is the goddess of question writing. That she's unstoppable. She'll write 50 super high quality multiple choice questions per day on literally almost any topic you want. She's terrifying, and the fact that she's 4'10" makes it hilarious. So. But other than that, folks, we got to let you go. Joe, thanks again for coming, brother.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Guys, take
all right,
care.
Y'all come back now. You hear? All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.